And then they were like, okay, tell us more games, tell us more games. Finally, I was like, Call of Duty, because I was obsessed anyway.
Right.
And so then all the questions were based on Call of Duty about what would I change? What do I like about it? What do I not?
Mm.
And
What's going on, everybody? We're back with the Ground Zero podcast, the official podcast of Lobby Zero, the Ground Zero for gaming. And we're finally on the 8th episode today. We made it past the first 7. So cheers to us, especially Vibhav, because he's been there from day one.
Yeah, except for like
And
one episode, I guess.
oh, yeah,
I
you're
had
right.
my exams.
Okay, so I'm taking away all credit from you. But yeah, today we're fortunate enough to have someone special join us. It is none other than Lamha Bijili. That's the first time I've said your surname, so I hope I got it right. She is currently
yes, Lamha Bijili is.
yes. So she is currently an associate game designer at Zynga. It's the first time we're having a game designer on board. So that's pretty exciting. We're really excited to have you
Yay.
on and to talk about your journey with design and gaming pretty much. I think for us, because this is the first time we're having somebody who professionally works. Actually, Roheen, our last guest, also worked in the industry, but it's the first time I think we're talking to someone from a technical background. I wouldn't say technical, more design, game design background is the first time we're having a conversation. So I think there's a lot of value that we can bring to the table today through this conversation. And thanks to Namil for hooking this up, because Lama is one of Namil's close friends, and that's how this happened. And so Lama, thank you so much for making the time and coming on. How you doing? How you
Really
feeling?
happy to be here. So excited.
Yeah,
I've seen all the work you guys do, and I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
absolutely, absolutely. I think there's a few questions. When we started doing this podcast, we had the goal of answering a range of questions across the industry from different spaces, whether it's conversations that we're having with creators or industry players, business executives, designers, developers. The vision was to have a wide range of conversations, with people like you. And I know that with the nascency of our market and the industry in India, I think there's a lot of people out there who who's asking the question about, how do I make it into the industry? How do I get into the industry? What's an effective way of doing it, right? And obviously there's different parts. Esports is one, game design is another, content creation is another. So there's different ways in. So I think today, through this conversation, we're going to get quite a bit of insight into at least what your personal journey is, even if it's not, we don't get into a preachy space, even if it's you just talking about how you kind of started off, what your most natural inclinations were. And those are the kinds of things that I want to touch on. So I think a great way to
Hmm.
start this off, is to talk about the beginning of your journey with design. And then we'll talk about gaming, because I feel like design probably came first. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, have you always wanted to, like, when was the last time, or when was the first time rather, that you thought, okay, you know what, this art design thing, and I might be wrong, because I have had conversations where they they don't have to be, connected. Like, art doesn't have to be the same thing as design. You don't have to be an artist to be a designer. So I could be wrong there as well, but I'm curious to know where your journey with design began.
All right. So, as a child, I was an artist. I used to paint a lot. I ideally wanted to take up fine arts when I finished school, but my mom sat me down and told me that artists never make it, and that they end up having depressing lives or getting addicted to drugs. So she gave me this talk and told me that let's do something else, like engineering, or become a doctor. So I was blessed enough to be in a school that let us take up art and design as a subject, and I had an amazing faculty there who told me about the top institutes in the country for design. So that's the first time I came across the names like National Institute of Fashion Technology or National Institute of Design. And he said, this is the limit. If you make it there, your life is good. And he explained to me that because I'm good at art, I could be good at design. Like you said, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but the fact that you're good at one can make you good at the other also. There are chances. So I gave that a shot, and I attended a lot of training, coaching to make it to design school. And that's how I got into design. But gaming or play experience as a design started much later, after I got into college. During my undergraduate years, I initially thought that I'm really into fashion. I thought handbags and clothes were a thing, and that's what I wanted to be in, which is a fun space to be in. But once I started off with that, I realized, I felt like I was very restricted. I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I wanted my users to interact with the products that I make at a much higher level than just be wearing it, which is also great, but it's not what I wanted to do.
Right.
So that's where I started trying to see. For me, it was very fascinating to be able to entertain a child for more than 5 minutes. It's impossible. They're very honest. They're brutally honest.
Right.
And it's so interesting to be able to put them hooked to something, to give them a favorite toy or a game. So I started picking up books about it, and I started trying to get into toys. So that was the first time.
So this was towards the end of your undergrad, was it? Like, is that what you said?
It was in my second year of undergrad.
Okay.
Yes. So from there, I took up an internship with a toy design startup called Shumi Toys in Bangalore. I worked with wooden toys for 2 months, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. This is something I would like to do. And then I again was a little doubtful if I wanted to leave fashion accessories. So I worked with Chumbak to make fashion accessories.
Right.
Worked on handbags, jewelry, shoes, and spent about 6 months there. But again, even though it's a playful company, it wasn't the kind of play I was looking for. So that was the time I made up my mind about how I didn't want to be in the fashion accessory segment.
Right. But was the transition, so when you decided, okay, cool, like this, I need a little more interaction with the kind of activity that I'm doing. Like I want the people who end up acquiring my work to be interacting with it more. Was that made easier because of your I think, was it 6 months you said was the stint with the toy manufacturer?
No, with the toy design place, I worked there for about 2 months. I continued freelancing for a while. Yeah, but it wasn't just because of that internship, but in general, whatever products I would make for college assignments and everything inclined towards play, toys, games, somehow.
Gotcha.
Even if I just made a lamp, I would want that lamp to be something that the users can play with to turn it on. I just always knew that's where I wanted to be.
Okay, so it's after so for you, it's about play. I guess that's where the journey started, right? The concept of play and the level of interaction that play allows for people. So then, is that when you decided to go into the degree? Like, you approach it from an educational standpoint, or did you try something else before learning more about it?
So after I finished my UG, I was very sure that, like I said, I wanted to get into toys or games. And at the time, digital was not an option. I mean, in my head, I didn't want to do digital because I felt like I didn't have enough exposure towards that. But so at that time, I was very limited to just toys and games, like board games, tabletop. And after that, I thought I would need a degree to be able to tell people I know what I'm talking about, because otherwise I do not have enough experience. And to be honest, it's not easy, especially for a woman, to be standing up and saying, I want to be an entrepreneur and start my own company, but not have enough accolades to, certify you know what you're talking about. So that's when I thought branding is important, and I took up masters in toy and game design.
I actually have a question here. This is something that I don't know as well, because I haven't really asked Lamha during the period that I've known her. I'm actually struggling with it as well, like in my career. So, after you graduate, your undergrad, and you're working and you're just like trying to figure out what you like, and so it's an ocean out there, and you're like trying to pick up different things, and you're working across projects, and when is the right time? Like you said, in terms of masters, because that requires a certain level of devotion and time and attention to apply to. And okay, another thing is fun fact: Lamha wrote the exam for NID entrance exam. She got a single digit rank. I don't think she will bring it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, let me correct you there. So NID has 15 seats in certain departments, and our department has 10. So basically, if you don't have a single digit, you're not in.
Oh.
Wow. How many people wrote
Okay.
that exam?
I don't know, 10,000.
Damn.
All right, cool.
That's a high barrier of entry. That's a high barrier of entry.
Like 0.1%.
Hey, thanks for doing the math. Were you looking at me? You were like, Isaac, that's 0.1%. Yeah, just checking math.
Anyway, circling back to the question is, just when do you think is that right time to actually take that risk of quitting your job, like letting go of that financial independence that you're getting used to loving, and actually taking that chance to, level up in terms of, a career as well? I think that would be, I think there would be some sort of value there, just to understand your journey.
Yeah, so this is a very tricky question because it really depends on you as a person. Because if you stay in the industry for 3-4 years, you will probably get promoted. You go to do a master's and come back, you'll probably start from scratch again and get promoted. So if you're looking at it as how am I going to do in a corporate world, it really depends on do you want a master's or not? Because I can probably learn in the industry certain things, what I learn in a college, different things, but it really depends on what do you want and how accomplished do you want to be in what you do. So it can be through a job and it can be through masters. And there's no barrier about how I have masters, so you don't know what I'm talking about. Definitely not. Somebody in a toy industry or a game industry who has spent 5 years there would know as much as or more than me. So it really depends on what do you want to get into. If you want a master's because you feel the need to learn more about that, it's important. Now, another thing about masters is a lot of people who want to shift their careers, who is an engineer or who's coming from a different background. We even have dentists, we have pharmacists joining NID for their masters because they want to shift what they do. So that's a different perspective at taking masters. So it really depends on you.
And what was your motivation like, primarily?
Like I told you, I personally wanted to be an entrepreneur at the end of the day. And to be an entrepreneur, I wanted to be sure I know exactly what it needs. I know where I'm coming from. I have all these accomplishments that make sure I am good. So I wanted to be, sort of like if you have a game, you want it to be an award-winning game. So if I'm the product, I wanted to make sure I have absorbed everything I can before I got into it.
I think that's an interesting school of thought, because I know there are two schools of thought. I mean, there could be more than two, but then I know there are people, especially when you go into the space of entrepreneurship, it's generally split between, if you're an entrepreneur, you go out there and you do it. Like, what are you talking about masters for? What are you talking about higher education? There's a lot of people. In fact, I think there's a general, correlation between entrepreneurs maybe not looking at higher education in a favorable way. But then what you're talking about, makes a lot of sense, because I think one of the big reasons that it makes a lot of sense is because you knew the exact space that you wanted to get into. I think that plays a big role, because you're talking about, because I also come across a lot of people who talk about doing a master's just for the sake of doing a master's, just for the sake of that next level of education. But then I think as far as the exact space that you want to get into, and then you're trying to level up, it's just like investing in yourself. At the end of the day, you're investing in yourself. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I just asked one question.
Sure.
It's really exciting to hear about all of this. How design came into play for your life. But where exactly did video games make an impact? How did video games or like your current career path come into picture, especially any incident related to that?
Yeah, so like I said, so now we've reached to my master's, and once I got in for my master's, it was in toys and games, and it was not just physical games, we had digital games as well. So we had modules where we had to develop digital games, and I had a lot of fun doing this. And I felt like it was something I reconnected with my childhood, because as a child, I would play Age of Empire or Road
No
Rash
way.
or
Yeah.
Are you
yeah, of
serious?
course. And
Oh,
of course, I
Age of
still love Age of
Empires.
Empire or Sim City or Road Rash, the usual games. But I lost touch with it because girls don't play video games.
Right.
And when you sit and play for too long, your parents tell you this is useless. It's not going to get you anywhere. So stop playing.
Mm,
So for whatever reasons, I lost touch with that part of myself. And I felt like I came back in contact with it and I really started enjoying it. But what really took a turn was I had co-authored a paper and we had gone to Scotland.
Hold,
Time. Wait, are
hold
they
on.
both stuck?
Lama,
You're
no,
more.
I think
Am I still
you
stuck?
got stuck. You said you were going to.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said
Good.
you.
Going to
Yeah, you said
Yeah.
you
what? Where was I
co-authored.
going?
You said you
Yeah, that's
co-authored
right.
a paper. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I co-authored a paper and we went to Scotland to present it. So
Oh,
during
wow.
that time, it's that conference is one of the most prestigious conferences in the world. And my team happened to be one of the 12 teams across the world who was chosen, the only team from India. And we were there with me and my friend, and we were mind blown because this conference is computer human interaction. Like I said, one of the best places to be. And we had teams from all Ivy League schools, and we had amazing people there presenting their ideas and games and interaction, like helmets that detect your waves, brain waves to change the movie that you're watching according to it, or insane stuff, and we were mind blown. And that's when I knew like this space had so much potential that probably we in India don't see enough,
Right.
and that was one of the other places that I thought this is something I really want to get into.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even for me, like when it comes to gaming, like from from the days that I can remember. So I mean, obviously there's different types of gamers and different kinds of people who appreciate games in different ways. But for me, a big part of gaming is how it's much bigger than just gaming. Like for me, the components and the elements that make up the industry is much bigger than that, because you see every other industry pretty much tapping into gaming to extract elements of it to make their own industry much more efficient,
Definitely, yeah.
productive, and creative. Even if you're looking at medicine, or like even the military, right? Like how they use um virtual reality, augmented reality, and principles that's been used, at very fundamental levels in gaming, in these other industries. So to me, even with um, the stuff that we want to do with Lobby Zero, like the big um, abstract visions of mine have to do with much more, much beyond just gaming, because I know that the potential within this industry can permeate other industries
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
immense.
Yeah.
Yep. Everything wants to be gamified.
Yeah, pretty much. So with regard to, I think this is pretty much. So what was so you said the first games that you played were like Age of Empires, Road Rash, stuff like that, right? How old were you when you started playing those games?
I think I played Age of Empire when I was in third or fourth grade.
Right, right. So when you were finding your um passion for art, and when you were finding your passion for like design art, were these things that kind of was an interesting filter for you when you look at these games? Because for me it's a big thing. Like I'm the kind of guy, I'll really appreciate the art in games and the worlds that are created in games. That's the big thing for me. I'm not much of a competitive gamer. So for you, when you think about the the video games out there today, how do you feel about the evolution of the art behind them, like from the first games that you played to the games that you hear about now? How do you feel about that as an artist, the art behind it?
I think it's incredible, like you said. I mean, the kind of experiences that these games can create and provide for the player is insane. Like, and depending, what's beautiful about the art is it can be 2D, it can be 3D, it can be absolutely anything. But when used wisely, it's the experience that a player gets from each of these games is so different. And the art completely controls it for the player.
Right.
The entire
Yeah,
experience
that's
is
a good
around
point.
it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So the correlation, it's a beautiful bond.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a good space to get into an interesting statement that came across before we got on the podcast, which is
Okay.
basically, you said COD M gave me a man and a job. So if you can expound on that a little more, I think it'd be pretty cool. Just to talk about um, what that space is. I mean, we could you can start talking about whichever thing first, depending on what you want to talk about first. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I'll go in chronologically how it happened.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds. Oh yeah, because it is pretty much connected anyway. Like.
It is pretty much connected. Yes, that's right. So my fiance, I have known him for about 6-7 years. We've been friends, but it never worked out while we were friends. But at this point of time, when the pandemic began, we were bored and we didn't have a lot to do. He's in Australia, and I logged into Call of Duty because all my friends were talking about it on mobile. I thought, let's give it a shot. So I started playing Call of Duty, and I noticed this guy was online. So I messaged him saying, you know what, I don't have anybody to play with. And most guys I know don't want to play with me. And I'm just starting off. So it would be really nice if you could like play with me and teach me a little. So we started talking, and he would come online and play with me every day just to talk to me. And we ended up playing like that every day for like 2 or 3 months. And when that happened, finally he told me that he confessed that he was just playing so that he can talk to me, and he was like a sweetheart. he was a sweetheart throughout the game. He would protect me and kill everybody else, and and he was very patient with me, didn't scream at me when I didn't know the controls because I was just learning. He would just patiently tell me, and by the end of it though, I started being better at the game than him, which is the truth.
Okay.
And anyhow, so so after that we hit it off, and that's how I think Call of Duty and him are related. Yeah.
Quick question. So he was an acquaintance.
Like,
huh?
What?
Imagine shot through COD, like.
Wait, I didn't hear the first part. I didn't hear the first part.
Like imagine shot through COD.
Yeah, imagine shooting a shot. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. But wait, was he an acquaintance?
No, so we know each other because we have a mutual best friend, and we would hang out together all the time in Bangalore.
Okay, so it's
so
like
we've hung out together
scratch.
a lot.
Okay, wait, but did you hang out with him before?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
So we were very good friends. Yeah.
Okay.
But we didn't have an opportunity to be talking every day, because we're friends. But why would we get on a phone and just randomly start talking? But Call of Duty gave us the platform and a reason to talk. So
right. Yeah, that's honestly that's like a metaverse concept. Because like he just because the whole game was played. I'm talking figuratively. The game was played on a game. The guy came out and he did his thing, and he used the mechanics of the game to show his chivalry. So all the guys out there, all the guys out there watching.
That was one of my. That's one of the main reasons I was impressed that he was so patient with me.
Yeah.
Because most guys I know are like, just stop playing, or like, you're not doing it right, or screaming at me, you should have shot him. But he was so patient with me. We'd get killed and he'd say, it's okay, we'll start again.
Yeah. So I think that's a rare commodity because guys are just so.
Literally, this is like notes. Patient? Got him?
We're gonna clip this. We're gonna clip this. How to find a relationship in COD, and we'll just put that out.
There's like this Venn diagram, patience and COD, and there's like
Yo, we can make a meme out of this, like a wholesome, healthy meme out of this.
Yeah, but
This
I
is
think
our
people
this is-
meet also, like for the first time on Battle Royale. I've heard about couples on Reddit.
yeah.
So
I mean,
people do get lucky.
yeah. I mean, more power to them. I just hope I hope that it happens more often, as long as it's it's
Are
done
you gonna
enough.
start playing the game now?
No, my scene is sorted. My scene is sorted, so it's not an issue.
Oh, okay.
um. So I guess talking about, so yeah, you were going in the chronological order. Yeah, you were going in the chronological order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then we ended up together. And soon after, we had campus placements, and Zynga came for the campus placements. I had my interview, and during my interview, they asked me to name a few played down, and I
Hold on.
named multiple
I think
games because I
I think
knew
you
they were
got
going to ask
stuck
questions
again.
about it.
I think you got stuck
Okay.
again.
Am I good now?
They came for campus placements and they asked you.
To name a few
Yeah.
games.
So yes, yeah. So we had the interview, and they asked me to name a few games that I play so that they can ask questions around it. And I try to say like very simple games because I can answer the questions. And then they were like, okay, tell us more games. Finally, I was like, Call of Duty, because I was obsessed anyway.
Right.
And so then all the questions were based on Call of Duty, about what would I change? What do I like about it? What do I not? And because I play this game so obsessively very often, I was able to answer everything. And that's how I got the job.
Wow.
So that's a man, a roof, everything together from just one game.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
that's
I still
crazy.
remember when she told me about Zynga. So I think like when I was in the UK, we were really into poker, and like we will. Oh my god, should I be saying this? So yeah, we used to play
If she,
without money.
at the end of this conversation, if she says it's not good, we can just cut it out. We can post produce.
Yeah, I mean this is more than my background.
Right. Go for it.
Yeah, so we were all really into poker, and I remember like being in class, and then everybody would still want to play poker like all the time. And I remember Zynga being like one of those, just like it was a no-brainer. That was the only app that everybody would use to like play poker, and like it was a part of my life. Like that name, that brand, like it was just ingrained. And when she told me that, oh, there's this thing about Zynga, I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah, I'm working there now. What?
Yeah, because Zynga,
oh,
I hadn't real. I mean, it was a while back when I realized how big Zynga was, because I think it was a point when they got acquired by Facebook, if I'm not wrong. That was when I kind of uh heard something about that. Is that true?
No.
No, it's not true. Or maybe it's because they got integrated into Facebook quite deeply, because those were the first
Yeah, I
applications
believe
that
there were like Facebook online games, and Zynga used to like have
Yeah,
certain-
like
Yeah, I mean, Farmville, Mafia Wars.
yeah, I think
Zynga started off from
yeah,
those.
exactly. Maybe that's where I was coming from, rather than from an acquisition, but more like I think I just mix it up in my head. But what I was saying was Zynga was one of the first ones that was doing all these major deeper integrations when it came to games on social platforms. So I think that's when I started realizing. Then I started seeing some numbers about it, and I was like, yo, this is big. Like this is a pretty big organization. So for you, what was it like? I mean, or what is it like, rather? Like, did you have certain expectations going into it? Were they met? Was it the same? Was it as you expected, or were there any big changes?
So I had no idea what I expected. Honestly, I wanted to work with Zynga. I mean, it's a huge name, and I had no idea what game will I be put in, because it was campus placements and they were picking up people for different games. In college, we had about 45 applicants, and they took 3 people for 3 different games. So you had no idea which game you're gonna go into. And so I had no idea what I was expecting. But once I got there, I found out I will be working with slots. Now, I had no idea what working with slots was like, because again, we don't have a slot culture in India. It's a very big thing in America, but we don't have that in India. And I'm sure you've seen a slot machine, but what really goes into it was a huge learning curve for me. So the first couple of months I spent on learning what it was and fitting into the team, being able to answer, because art, animation, everybody has questions about what the game is like, and designers supposed to, take a call about these things. So yeah, so that's where slots came in. And what I got really excited about working with Zynga was that we had I'm working with two titles, one of them being Game of Thrones and the other one being Willy Wonka. So I get to work on legit like Game of Thrones
IPs,
franchise. So
right.
it's insane. The IPs are insane because we have calls with HBO, we have calls with whenever we send something out, it's approved by the actor, and just able to get into space where you're able to do that, because I'm a huge fan of Game of Thrones.
Right.
So yeah, so that's what I think I got more excited about.
Just circling back to the slot thing, asking for a friend. Are there any is there any way to win? Is there any specific way we can win things on the app? Asking for a friend strictly. This is a professional question.
Yeah. So how slots work is basically it's a curve, and the curve it's a slope, and the slope never goes upwards. It'll only go downwards, whatever happens, whichever slot machine. But you will win. But the point is, you won't win 100% of the time. Depending on the machine, it might be 95, 97, 98, but you'll feel like you're winning because the percentage is so high. But that 3% coin sink is more than enough to keep the slot machine alive.
I love how confused Namil is right now.
I'm correlating with this with like JDA slot machine.
He's like, can you just give me cheat codes to win?
Interesting.
So, so I guess the question you're now talking about, the games that you're working on, the games that you got on board with, is this what you would categorize as social games, right? Does this what falls under that categorization? What are the main things that you have to consider? I guess more specifically from um a game designer's perspective, like when it comes to a project like that, what do you feel like are the biggest properties or components that you think about a lot, when it comes to games like that, maybe even from a
Yeah.
designer's perspective?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things to consider. See, when you're working in a company as big as Zynga and somebody who does this for a very long time, we obviously have enough to fall back on data wise, and we have enough things
References.
to look at to know, what does well and what doesn't. So we have a good idea about the certain games that did really well and why they did really well. And we always have data analysts working on these things. So we look at data. Everything is very data driven that way.
Is there a lot of reinvention? Is there a lot of rapid reiterations, or is it like you come up with one big shift in the design and stick with it for a while, or do you keep innovating and rethinking how the game is designed and bring updates in and stuff like that?
Again, it really depends. If that shift is very much required, we run it by the rest of the team. So maybe product managers or whoever, also looks at the revenue side and sees that it does this work out from a revenue perspective. And if it does, we make the shift. If it doesn't, we won't make the shift.
Right.
We do whatever is best for the product.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair
But
enough.
if
But
you're
it is-
talking about it from a perspective outside of a corporate world, things are very different.
Yeah. With social games, I think it's a pretty huge world out there. I mean, for me and Isaac, I guess it's a pretty alien thing because we've been huge AAA fanboys, sort of. We always gravitate towards campaigns and stuff. But social game is pretty huge. I remember like Supercell, showing insane numbers, and then Zynga's always a huge player out there. So, what is the huge differentiating factor when it comes to making a AAA game versus making like a social game? What is this one thing you have to consider that way?
This is something I argue with a lot of people because they tell me that you're not making a AAA game. Are you really a game designer? So this is a very tricky question. Now, see, the thing is that now how do I compare this? So do you want to? It really depends on a AAA is as a designer, you get to make very small decisions because it's a huge team. The entire work that goes into it is so big. Whereas over here, I can make a decision because we are a live game. We send out things every day, every week, every month, and there are small things happening all the time. Whereas a AAA game, you take years to make. So it's
The-
as good as it's very different. Both these things are very different, and it really depends on what you want to do. And again, I mean, if it's like in a AAA, you're taking a bus journey, and have
Hold on, Lama. I
so
think you got
it's
stuck
the
again.
amount
You
of
said
people that are again
you said in AAA you're taking a bus journey, and
just start from the
in yeah. So when in a AAA game, you're taking a bus journey where everybody in the bus is involved in making this bus move, and then you have a hatchback where you have 3, 4 people making that car move. So it's like, what do you want to be a part of? You know?
right, right, yeah. I guess it comes from. I mean, were you ever interested in entering that space in the AAA into the AAA space? Is it something that you have experience with in terms of like even gaming, right? Like, have you tried those titles out? Have you been that kind of a gamer?
No, I haven't tried out a lot of AAA games. I would love to, but I don't have a platform, so I
Right.
don't get to.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, I have a MacBook and it does not support most of the games and it's difficult. But
Right.
in general, I don't think I want to get into it. I'd love to play it, but I don't think I want to design for a AAA game because, again, I feel like if I put something into it, it's going to take me years to see it in game.
Mm.
And the limitations is a lot, because there's a lot of narration that's happening, animation that's happening. But as a designer, I don't know if my role, unless or until I'm a superior,
Mm.
will be very
Do you feel
impactful in the
like
game.
do you feel like your inclination towards entrepreneurship plays a part in that as well? Because you feel like you'd be a smaller cog in a bigger title like that. Like you feel like you're
Maybe, yeah.
interesting,
Yes, definitely.
interesting.
There's a pretty rampant culture, which is crunch culture, that goes around in AAA. I mean, the stories are wild about crunch culture.
Yeah.
uh, I mean, I'm just curious to know whether this also affects mobile game industry or like the social game industry at your level. Um,
It
or is it?
doesn't affect where I am. It does not affect. But I don't know if you can call it crunch culture, but I know a lot of startups in India, personally with friends who work there, where they complain about how they have absolutely no time for anything. They don't have days off, weekends off, or they're working through the night. So it really depends on how much they're trying to pull off with how many employees they have. So
Right.
So Zynga is a pretty like let's say employee friendly
very
company.
employee friendly,
Yeah, I was
very,
surprised.
very employee
Yesterday,
friendly.
yesterday you were telling me, like weekends are weekends, and you get to work on on the slots that Namil's face. What does that phrase mean?
What does that even mean?
But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's really cool. I think but I guess one question that I had with regard to the kinds of titles that you work on is I feel like with the games that you talk about and the games that you work on, it's definitely the ones that are probably more accessible to the masses, if that's one way to put it. I feel like hence you see like the crazy ridiculous player bases for the titles that Zynga and Supercell and these games come up with. um do you how do you feel about the statement that they could potentially be a gateway to like more what do you say, a more diverse range of titles? Or do you feel like that's a place where people come and they stay there, and like that's pretty much the space that they want to be, like they just want to be engaged in that kind of game, in those kind of games? Or do you feel like there could be a gateway into more diverse experiences, play experiences beyond the social games and the deeper experiences?
Yeah, so right now we are into this, but I know that Zynga has acquired Star Wars. They're into Star Wars. They've acquired quite a few startups like Rollic Games, which is a hyper casual game. I think Zynga is also planning to expand into console gaming. So
Right.
you know they are getting into different things.
Gotcha.
That's really huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because for me, the way I look at the industry and the market here is like, okay, cool. We've got mobile, and that's what's made this population functional as a gaming population. And
True.
I mean, it's simply due to the fact that it's from a spending power point of view, from an accessibility point of view, from the hardware requirement point of view. There's a lot of boxes that are being checked because of the mobile platform. So for me, I've always asking myself like, okay, so there is this mobile industry, and there is a specific set of genres of games that exist on mobile and are really blowing up for the market. But I've always asked myself if that can end up being uh, like a gateway into bigger titles and bigger experiences and bigger. So
I think
it's a yeah.
I
Go.
think the I think the transition is like already undergoing because like Lamha said, CODM. It's
Hmm.
as close as you can get right now to a proper
That's a good point.
computer or controller based game.
Right.
And I mean there are games like PUBG which basically started this all, and then there's Genshin Impact, Sky, like at least indie scenes and huge AAA basic cloud gaming systems that
Right.
have started coming in. So I believe we are slowly transitioning into the space where mobile is more of an
That's a good
accessible.
point. I think once cloud gaming is a proper reality, it'll
Yeah.
it'll open up a lot of, especially at the rate at which internet has blown up in this country, exponentially. Like
Insane.
I know people who are in more developed markets who pay more for slower internet. So I think it's pretty amazing. So if cloud gaming becomes a reality, man, like I know, yeah, I mean that's probably an inflection point where things blow up, like in terms of gaming experiences.
Oh,
What do you think are like the one, two, or maybe three things you feel like make a good game? I don't even know if that's a dumb question, but what do you feel like are in your mind as a player, as a game designer, what do you feel like make a good game?
It's again a really tough question, but a few quick pointers would be, why does this person play the game? What does this person get from playing the game? And what does this experience provide for the player in the sense, am I trying to play it again and again to get better at it? Am I trying to play it to go somewhere? Am I getting a feedback that takes me through an experience? What am I getting from this game? So quick
Right.
few, why does the player play?
Right.
Actually,
Right.
You can get it.
would you be able to actually kind of use that in a practical example using one of the games that you've created, maybe? Like I've seen. That's another thing.
Maybe slots, yeah.
No, so
He's
the
like,
game.
give me a practical example. Cheat code. Practical example.
See, but I'll give you a practical example. I'm not getting into one of the games I've made because then I'd have to explain what the game is to you. But to quickly put this in perspective, why do you play Snake and Ladder? Is it really a game? Because you move across the board, but are you getting good at it? Can you be good at it?
I feel the
But
same way about Ludo because I keep losing, and I'm
but
like,
at least
why are we doing this?
in Ludo, you make decisions. You want to get one out, you want to
That's a
keep
good
that
point.
one
That's a
there,
good
you want to
point.
keep
That's a
the
good
other
point.
one going. It's a strategy. But what do you do in Snake and Ladder? Is it a game?
There's no strategy, right?
Wait, what's the answer? Like, I'm curious.
It's a huge debate online if you Google is Snake and Ladder a game? Because nobody knows. Is it really a game? We have half the people saying it is, and another
I
half
mean,
saying it isn't. But
ultimately, it's still a experience in itself,
it
right?
is. It's fun. But as
Yeah,
a
there's
game,
no
yeah,
idea
as a
behind it.
game, it doesn't have a boundary.
Yeah.
I think, but if it gets categorized as an experience of play.
It's
Maybe
it's a,
that's one way to look at it.
it's slightly on a borderline, I guess. It's more of a
Wow, this is
roll the dice.
this is a question I didn't see coming. I've never thought about snakes and ladders this deeply. I'm like, is it a
Exactly.
game?
So let's say now let's look at why does a person play Snake and Ladder? Okay, you enjoy the conversation around it, you enjoy playing with another person, so you're
Hmm.
enjoying the experience of your company maybe. But as a game, what exactly are you doing? It's a game of chance. You're moving forward. You might go down, you might go up, but you're not really doing anything.
I think as long as
Nami
there's
looks like.
I always play to win. Like I'm just thinking, I'm just questioning everything.
But how can you, as a person, add to your victory?
It was
How
actually
can you make sure you win?
do the dice. Like I felt like
no, that's an invalid
That's a
point.
good feeling.
Listen,
But is your feeling valid?
no, that's what you're making me question. Like, is that valid?
I think the fact that wow, I really like how this made me think. I think the fact that there is an element of there is an inevitable element of interaction. Okay, rolling the dice. Okay, that's an element of interaction.
So when I switch on a light, I interact with the switchboard.
No, so that's what I'm saying. So there's a specific set of rules set in that game, right, on that platform. Okay, look,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
ladders, there's snakes,
Yeah.
and this is a board 16 by whatever the ratio is. And there's a board, and you roll a die. I guess the thing that makes you question it so much is the fact that there is the only element of interaction is anchored in
Chance.
luck. Yeah, chance, right? Chance is a better word. So I don't know if that makes it an invalid game, but I guess yeah,
it's on like a borderline
we're
thing.
clipping this.
Yeah.
We're clipping this. Is snakes and ladders what you think
No,
it is?
I want
Debate in
everybody
the
to know what
comments.
Isaac thinks about the game, and that Namir thinks he has some magical powers while rolling the dice. I want this live.
Namir
that's
is
the
like,
thing,
I just
rules
want
can
for cheat
exist.
codes.
So rules can exist. I mean, it's a rule that the switch has to be, like I said, it has to be downwards to be on and upwards to be off. Now, that's a rule, but how does that make it a game? It's not a game. So it's debatable because some people will say it is a game. So
I guess it's more of a gamifying the borderline concept of chance. Similar example would be like, like we were talking about how other industries are trying to sort of make their interaction much more playful, much more interesting. So maybe
I guess yeah, that is really what it is. I think because when I play snakes and ladders and the people that I play with, the feeling of rolling the die is actually what gives me pleasure, because I guess it's a game of, is my chance better than yours? It's like it's the experience of testing that out in within the context of snakes and ladders.
I still debate.
I agree
that this
with
is on a
you, but the
borderline.
real it could be, but the real question is testing out chance a game? I mean, does it fit the box of a game?
Yeah.
So we don't know. I mean,
debate in the comments below. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think this is a really cool it's a really cool thought.
Yeah.
I think if we clip this, we should get people to respond. I'd really like to know what people think about it. Awesome. Thanks, Lamha, for bringing that. Lamha was a little concerned about whether we would have enough clips. I think we have more than enough clips at this point. So I guess the next thing that I would want to talk about is this very interesting project that I haven't really dug much into, because I just wanted to hear you talk about it and just learn about it. What I've heard it being called is India's first inclusive playground, and this is one of the projects that you have worked on. So I'd love to know a little more about what that is.
Yes. So this was in association with BM Institute of Mental Health in Ahmedabad, and as well as Al Hind playground manufacturers. And so what happened is they contacted NID for the students to take up a live project. And we contacted BM Institute saying that we have a sponsor and we can use the resources from your institute and our students can work on a live project and we'll install a real playground there. And that's how the project came into being. And as a class, we worked on our design project that lasted about 6 weeks, out of which 4 weeks went into research and the final 2 weeks to design. And it was actually a very, very, very interesting project because this was the first time I did not even know if I wanted to work in special education or if I had an interest in it. But usually we are given the choice to work on whatever project we want to. And this was the first time the entire class had no choice but to work on special education. So we first went into the school, we met the children. And once we met the children, we were like, we love these kids. We have to make them the playground, and then we were driven. We had become friends with the kids. We knew them by names. We chill all the time. We went there and spent quality time with the teachers, with children. And once we got to understanding what are the different kinds of play that they do within the classroom, then we tried to make these sort of mock products, and we would take it back to the children and do a research about it. So we try to understand different kinds of play, like physical, sensory, or let's say passive. So what kind of play does a child enjoy, and do these children enjoy in particular? What escalated their emotions? How did they involve in these projects? So we started taking different colored films, we started taking different materials and letting them just go wild with it, and we turned out with really interesting outputs and research findings, which we handed over to the institute because they could really use it as well. And we found out things like we gave the children all kinds of colors and asked them to pick their favorite colors. We gave them paper and crayons and said, draw with your favorite color. And we realized that these kids picked up black a lot, which was like really confusing for us because children, we always assume they like bright colors, and this led to a lot of questioning and us thinking about, is this because of an emotional place they're in, or is there more to this than just picking up a color? So we had a lot of findings from there, which we used to make play equipments in the playground. And based on these findings, we tried to divide them into all kinds of different play, like sensory, passive, imaginative, different kinds of things. Yeah, and we made them a playground.
That is really cool. I think we have a few pictures that you've shared with us. So hopefully we'll be able to put some stuff up on the post-production as Lamha was talking about.
I mean,
yes.
That is a pretty interesting take on this. So basically, I've also been trying to, work at my own space. This is a bit rural-sided. So, the kids lack a bit when it comes to resources. But this is a pretty interesting find. Firstly, I really like that statement about, how these kids are so lovable. Because, I mean, they have like no, biases when it comes to loving someone.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's one thing we also love because they're not competitive. You give one of them chocolate, they're all happy that one person got the chocolate. Not in a normal school, you give them a chocolate and everybody's fighting for it. These kids are so lovely. Yeah.
And they will just remember you so well. And I mean, I because of like college and stuff, I rarely get to go there now. But even if I visit like a month later, they'll all just swarm around me, ask me a lot of questions about how my college is going and stuff like that. So it's a pretty interesting thing. Do you think there is a way to sort of learn from this research that you guys happen to do, and maybe there is a way to share this research on a broader scale?
Yeah, because I was actually gonna go into that, because the more you talk about this, the more I realize that, I mean, whatever kind of game it is that I come across, at the end of the day, it really is an experience. And like, I mean, storytelling is one thing that's a big part of the certain type of games that I play, but the mode of interaction is obviously another, and the mechanisms and the design of how an individual can interact with that particular IP is obviously one of the big things. And the more you talk about this, I realize that uh, the roots of all these things eventually come back into real human interactions with physical things, because that's where it began, right? And the whole concept of a playground is so it's like, I guess, in a way, the genesis of a lot of the things that we see today, like even on a digital platform. So I was going to get into that question and talk and ask you about how you kind of extract the learnings from that experience, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, everything, right? Even when you're in a digital game, you are experiencing audio, you're visuals, almost tactile. Some certain technology that even allows you to feel things tactile, you know? Am I
Mhm.
breaking up?
Yeah, you were breaking up. You experienced audio.
Yeah, so I'm saying that in a game, you experience different kinds of sensory feedback, right? Like
Right.
audio and visual, that's almost tactile. So the whole point is even in a digital experience, you're basically in a physical space,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
and you're imagining the rest of the things, even if it's a 2D platform and
Yeah.
I'm walking on a flat ground,
Yeah.
I'm still imagining myself walking on a flat
Yeah.
ground.
And now with
And
vibrations on your phone or your
yes,
controller,
there are
it's
all
even
kinds of
tactile. Yeah.
feedbacks. Yes, all kinds of feedback. There are technologies that let you feel, you know, I can feel what exactly I'm touching in just air by, you know, vacuum. So it
Oh
exists.
wow.
So
Oh
yes,
yeah. Wow.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Uh,
I didn't think about it. That's crazy. That's
yeah,
crazy. Yeah.
it's this little box. It sends out air and
So
vacuum,
it.
and it creates the texture of what you want to touch. You can touch cotton, you can
Oh.
touch brick.
Oh, that's so cool. So it calibrates the way that the vacuum is
Yeah, it's
created.
coded into it what kind of products that you want to feel, and you can
That's
pick
so
which
cool.
one. I saw this in Scotland. I was mind blown. I touched everything, and I was like, no way, you know,
So
this
it's
actually exists.
basically manipulation of air, is it?
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, with even PS5, the
Yeah,
haptic
the
sense
controller.
feedback.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
The
these
fact
guys, they managed to, like, through
and
the rumbling,
yeah,
Hmm.
it's crazy.
it
Right.
basically
Yeah.
gives like different textures. If you're walking on sand, if you're walking on metal,
Oh
the
wow.
controller vibrates differently.
No, but in COD, if you play Call of Duty on PS5, the recoil is different based on the gun that you're
Yeah,
shooting.
so your trigger basically shoots off differently.
Insane. That's
Hmm.
actually insane.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually want to ask a question. I think the thing that you said about the children picking the color black, and you know how you kind of thought about mental health, and I mean, I personally know that you are a huge advocate for mental health, and I just wanted, this is actually for my dad as well, because we've had these back and forths about how there is a correlation between mental health and gaming, and obviously he's on the side that not just him, even the government of India, if you really know, that it makes people more violent, and if there is a negative impact based on gaming, and if you think that's true, and what are your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, you can give people absolutely anything and they can do something positive with it, they can do something negative with it. I mean, you give them anything. I mean, I'm looking at Isaac drinking a bottle of water. He is being nice to the bottle. I mean, he can also throw it at someone. So it really depends on what do you want to do
Don't
with
piss
it,
me
right?
off, bro. Do not
Yeah,
piss
you
me
don't
off.
want to.
I
So
can be John
inside
Wick with his bottle.
So inside a game, you will see all kinds of people. There are people who watch you die or you know, kill you slowly, or things that show significant amount of violence, and definitely a mental health problem that is probably developed within the game, and you're living your sadistic life in a different world. But there are also people who might take it out of a game and start thinking that they are, you know, they can be part of the army or know how to operate a real gun. So it's there are people who are capable of doing these things, but that does not uh, kill the chances of it also being a very positive impact on a person. And again, talking about mental health and gaming, there are so many games that are inspired to tell the story of many mental health issues like depression or schizophrenia. So many games inspired by these problems that give people an experience of how does it feel to live with this for the rest of your life. So it really depends on, how you're going to use the power you get, right? I mean, it can be negative, it can be positive, but you can't cancel the other one out.
I mean, in even in your case, one of the most violent games like COD basically resulted in you getting a
Yes.
job. And
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a violent game. And I know that when I'm in a bad mood, I tell people I'm going to go shoot someone in the face right now on Call of Duty. But I'm not
I
going to do
mean,
that
yeah,
in real
it's
life.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's an interesting debate because um I mean, when I was a kid, obviously I had a different outlook. In fact, I actually didn't play much of like violent video games or whatever. I kind of stuck to the basketball, racing, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I think the interesting debate that's coming out now is that at the end of the day, at least in the realm of AAA games and like the story-driven games that I play, like narrative-driven stuff, I guess one of the first ones that I played was Far Cry, and then I've played a couple more since then, obviously. Um, I think an interesting debate that's come out is, like you said, the depictions of violence,
Yeah.
the how it's being translated, how it's being depicted, how the story is being told in such a graphic and explicit manner. I mean, obviously being enhanced because you're interacting with it. Like you could be the person inflicting that damage or pain, or you could be that person who's doing the violent thing or the violent act. um I think the debate is usually like as the organization or as the artist or as the creator of that particular piece, everyone's always going for how to be as true as possible to that experience, because even today, even if you're not talking about games, and if you're talking about, let's say, film, or you're talking about music, you're talking about any medium of experience or entertainment that people enjoy, at the end of the day, the stuff that gets really recognized and appreciated at like the highest level, it's the stuff that tries to convey in all like maximum
Reality.
reality, right? It's trying to like, translate something as real as it can. And I feel like that can in the space of video games, because it's such a also a nascent medium in the big picture of things in relation to other mediums, the fact that you're interacting with it and all of a sudden you see the explicit way now with graphics being improved to different levels, and like you said, all these haptic feedbacks and all different kinds of sensory feedbacks, experience is so real now. And obviously the creators and studios have taken advantage of that to create the most realistic experiences for people. And so I think the debate comes from like people saying, look, if you're playing the first Far Cry game and you're shooting someone in that game in a very 2D, I mean 3D setting in it, it's but it's very nascent, it's very like it's very far from reality in the sense that it's not what today's games are in terms of fidelity and like how real they seem
Yeah.
from a graphical point of view. But then today it just seems so real, and therefore it's more dangerous, so I think me personally, like, obviously, like, I've played a lot of these games and I've been a person who didn't play them because I had a certain viewpoint, and then I started playing them, and I mean, as far as people know me, I'm quite okay. I haven't messed up.
That's what
I
he's trying
mean,
to say.
I would say
Yeah.
I probably have a higher tolerance for um consuming violence, uh but that wouldn't necessarily make me a violent person, you know I think my
Hmm.
ability to absorb a story, and this is something that I've even experienced even in a religious setting, because there's a lot of stories that you come up with, like even if you take the Bible or any religious text, and you or any book, any story that's being trying to be told, there are a lot of settings in those. If you really read into it and you imagine, if you were watching it, if you were there in person and watching that happen, it would be a pretty graphic and intense experience. Like, there's no doubt about it. I mean, but still you're experiencing this as a story being told either through text or by voice by somebody else. But at the end of the day, that if that thing happened and if you were there in person watching that happen, it could be in like a war, it could be a murder or anything that's being explained in these stories.
I think
There in person, you would absorb it in a very intense way. And
I I
yeah.
think that's a part of it. Basically, just like how TV was, criticized back in its day for,
Yeah, actually, that's a good comparison. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, gaming is the new thing, I guess,
Mm,
and it is allowing like a new interactive layer of people, directly connecting in with the character. So,
yeah.
but violence and media has gone hand in hand just to even tell a story for like centuries now. It's
Mm,
been in plays, it's been in books, it's been in mm, TV, and now it's been in games. But ultimately, I believe violence itself can be a very shallow way to look at games, because these games are all trying to tell their own stories
mm,
in a lot of ways, or
right.
at least deliver an experience in itself. I mean, some stupid storyline for like Mortal Kombat is ultimately still a fun experience, fighting with your friends and just talking smack about them as you beat them. So I think it's a pretty interesting conversation, but it's very unjustified to hold gaming as the
Mm,
negative impacting
right. Right.
product.
But I
Definitely.
think we didn't circle back to your answer because
Yeah.
I think we went off of Nabil's thing and then yeah, but then mental health, correlation between gaming and mental health. What are
Yeah.
your feelings about that?
I mean, also, what inspired you to create the board game that you had created for mental health as well?
Yes. So, just commenting on what we were talking about, I just want to add that, when a designer makes these games, even if they're violent, uh, it's their duty to put in their empathetic point of view as well in the
Mm,
game. And
mm,
as a designer, you make choices, you take calls that, if you kill someone, you can't do more with that body, or you can't do anything else with it, or cut it into more pieces. These are things that we take
mm,
as a choice about how we control the violence within a game,
mm,
right? Now, that's one thing to look at. And another perspective that I personally find very damaging in gaming, in violence, is that if you're playing with somebody else, and like I said, you're starting to bully them within the game,
mm,
and they are going to get off of it in a bad way. If I am being bullied and painfully killed by someone online, and I have to be in that experience and watch him kill me for a longer amount of time, it's a traumatic experience. And it's, as
mm.
a designer, I would make sure that your timeout is 10 seconds and you die.
Right.
So this is a decision that somebody made so that these violences do not go on for too long,
Mm. That's a
right?
good point.
So yeah, so these decisions are made. The violence is controlled, and it doesn't really give you the entire experience of it. Wherever is possible, it's controlled, it's restricted,
For
and
sure.
we try to stick to the heart of the game.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to mental health in gaming, like I said, there are so many opportunities, so many games that focus on different things. And for me, like Namil said, I have been a mental health advocate from personal experiences of what I've gone through and what people I know have gone through. And I just personally believe that, most people, even statistically, most people who deal with a mental health problem in their adulthood is somebody who had some sort of an impact in their childhood. And
Mm,
most children play, which is why I think during play in their childhood years is the best time for an early intervention. Now, most children who go to a therapist usually get involved in play therapy because children won't simply start talking. So you give them a doll and tell them do whatever you want to the doll, and you see how that child is she
True.
violent? Is he hitting the child? So you watch different patterns of a child play, and you understand what's in their head, and usually with a practitioner or a guide. And it's just very interesting to see that both of these things are very close to each other, and you basically play exactly what's going on in your head. I mean, you hate your uncle, you're probably going to punch the pillow a lot more times thinking it's him, so that you take that aggression out somewhere. So it'll always be somehow correlated, which is why I thought it's a very interesting space for me to be, because I feel that I will be able to express myself and stand up for the mental health problems that I feel India neglects a lot through something I do, and that would be play and creating experiences that are meaningful to the people who participate, to answer these questions or take them somewhere or leave them at least with a thought about how important this is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
That's
intense.
fair. That's fair. Yeah, that's
That's
it's a really good point. It's
Yeah.
a really good point.
Yeah.
Do you feel like these are sentiments that should be considered more in the mainstream? Because obviously, like, there's a lot of titles that are being played by uh very young demographics, right? I mean, when it comes to games, your general demographics are quite young, and then um there are recorded demographics and non-recorded demographics, but obviously there's a lot of young people who play video games. um do you feel like this is a concept that should be taken more into consideration in the mainstream and maybe subtly integrated, or and give opportunities for those experiences to contribute to a positive mental health trajectory? Or do you feel like that, I don't know, how do you feel about that? Is it something that you think should be done more?
So again, it's a question about what does it do? I mean, you can increase awareness, you
Mm.
can help solve problems, you can provide therapy through games. Now, what are you trying to do? What's the purpose of that particular game? So if you introduce this in mainstream, what does the player get from the end of it? Right?
Mm.
Am I becoming more aware of a problem, like one particular mental health issue? Am I coming to this game because I have a mental health issue and I need help from this game? So there are different perspectives to look at it, and it really depends on that. So, like I
Mm.
said, there are already many games out there that give experiences for players about how to live with a migraine, depression, schizophrenia, and they use, like, for example, schizophrenia in a game where you can hear voices or you can see things in double, or it's inspired from hallucination. So it leads to giving people a real life experience of having to live with that.
Mm.
So
Right.
it really depends on what are you trying to do with that game. What's your
Mm.
purpose?
Because I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like these are stories that are being told, right? I mean, for example, I've played a few games where the central theme around it, or rather theme, maybe the story is about that particular individual. I think Life is Strange
yeah.
is probably one of those titles where, um,
I was about to say that it
yeah, it
really heavily emphasizes on building empathy as the
right,
character.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So I guess when I talk about mental health, maybe I'm coming at it from the angle that, I see a lot of titles like that who create opportunity and space for you to empathize with the struggles of the protagonist and the struggles of the character. And for me personally, I think it's a great thing. But yeah, I mean, like you said, it makes sense. Like, it's depending on what the game is being created for, what the purpose and the narrative of the game is, and the player, what they're coming in for. So I think, yeah, that's
uh
fair. Yeah.
just circling back to a previous discussion about making games or playground for specially able kids. One of those words was making an inclusive playground, which is a very interesting aspect because a regular playground rarely takes into consideration certain amount of disabilities that could prohibit them from enjoying in a similar way to a, let's say, just for the word's sake, normal kid. When it comes to video games, do you think there is an aspect of inclusivity that has been looked into? Do you think like video games are making moves for this? Because I've heard of discussions. So basically, Xbox has made a proper controller that is basically for the specially able, and games are trying to involve colored outlines that basically highlight your enemies in a different color if you suffer from color blindness.
Right.
And then
Right.
you can change like the subtitles, you can change how the game lets you know like audio cues uh, through a video perspective. So these are like factors that inclusivity has uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Considered. Yeah.
So do you think this is at a level where it is acceptable, or do you think games are trying more? And uh, is there like any such discussions in your own gaming space?
No, not in my own gaming space, but like you said, it's already being discussed in a lot of places. And I think in today's world where we are talking so much about inclusivity, about different things, about accepting people for who they are, we are seeing this sort of a trend across industries. So it's not just in gaming, and especially with regard to gaming, we have all kinds of things that are happening. But for a mainstream game, that would make it big to for example, there are games that, let's say, when you say inclusive, normal people, like you said, namesake word, I'm using normal people here, but anybody should be able to play.
Right.
Experience fits both these participants, or 10 of these participants, or hundreds or millions of these participants, is difficult. So it can be as inclusive as it can, or it can be specially designed for a particular group. Now, if I'm designing a game that is beautiful but cannot be played by a blind person, now I'm designing something that's audio influenced, and you can play just through the feedback of audio inputs. Now, how many people who are not visually challenged would enjoy playing that game?
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So there are many questions that come across this when I try to say inclusive. We can make sure that this particular experience, even if you have certain backgrounds, you can still play it, but you can't make it 100%. It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
True.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I guess that's where the approach that you took towards that inclusive playground comes in. Like the fact that you went in with the goal of creating something for that group of people. It's definitely a similar approach that can be taken, and it is being taken. I mean, obviously, we have smaller, scalable adjustments that are being made in the mainstream, like what Xbox has done, and what other manufacturers, or rather, studios have done in order to make the games in a scalable way more playable
Yeah.
across a wider spectrum. But I think where
Yes.
what it really comes down to is people like what you did with that playground project, having that specific goal of going in and creating something for that group of people. That's probably the stuff that's going to end up being um, more what's the word for it, realistic, and the effective way to approach it, probably, because the other one, like she said,
Yeah,
is definitely from a
exactly.
scalability
And
point of view. Yeah.
even with the playground, what we try to do is, when we say inclusive, we try to make it universal. We didn't want it to be like, you can come in a wheelchair and ride something, and that this swing will only operate with a wheelchair. Now, no, that's not the purpose of this. The purpose was everybody can play. So we try to make sure that if you are on a wheelchair, you don't have to like reach up to something. So it's a little lower. Now that way I can include somebody who's standing and somebody who's sitting. So we try to think of getting solutions where we can involve as many people as possible. But that does not mean 100% can.
Right.
But consciously we make decisions to make sure most people fit in.
Right. Yeah. I guess, but then I guess the the starting point of you wanting to do that and approach it in that particular manner is, it's anchored in your empathy for a specific um situation, so that you can create, like you the word inclusive is a great word, because you are trying to be inclusive to them, and the approach is kind of originating from your empathy towards that, because otherwise obviously you wouldn't go the extra mile to make those adjustments and create um those different calibrations and settings for more people to jump in, right? So I think
Yeah, honestly, it also comes from research, because how many people are on a wheelchair? How many people can walk?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. Cool. I think those are some of the biggest themes that we want to touch upon, and we're also hitting the time that we had initially set out to do. So
Yeah, that's right.
uh honestly, I would like to close off with one thought. This is something that we actually ask most of our guests, so whenever we do have a guest, um
Okay.
what is one thing that you currently do not like about the gaming industry? And well, sometimes when I talk about people who work in the industry, they find that a little tricky of a question. So I'll approach it as, what is one thing you are really looking forward to fixing or improving in the industry, in the Indian gaming industry? And what is one thing that you think is great? It's going great and is going in the right direction. One thing you don't like and one thing you really like about what's happening in the Indian gaming industry.
Yeah. So one thing I really like is that we have a lot of gaming studios in India, lots of opportunity. If you want to be in gaming, you have so many studios to apply to, so many startups, so much space. That's great. Now, what I don't like about it is that you you
Lama, you got stuck again.
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you not like?
Yeah. So what I don't like about the industry is that we have so many studios who are coming from international, branches or whatnot. But how many of them are making quality games here? Now, it's just like, honestly, I feel like most of the labor work comes to India more than the design work, because I have spoken to so many people from the industry who say that they are tweaking something, or they are working on, if it's not an employee friendly company, then they're really working on something to keep a game alive, not really adding to it, which is something that's not fair. Because honestly, it's because I have no other way to put this, but India is cheap labor, right? You can
Right.
hire how many ever engineers you want and to get them working on something. But what are you thinking about how can they impact the game and be decision makers? Now that's a question I don't know if a lot of studios can answer confidently. If they're an international studio, that they do let India do. I mean, I know in Zynga I've had a great experience, but I've also have people who work with me in Zynga who've left companies because they felt like they weren't adding value there.
Right.
And another thing that I would say is that only 20 to 30% of an industry so big is women, which is a huge problem. In my team, I'm the only girl. In my bigger team, I'm one of the 3 girls, which is not okay. This is a huge problem, because in a design college, 60 to 70% are women. Where do they go?
So when you say it's a problem, do you mean that from the perspective of a barrier of entry or a lack of interest?
So now it can be both.
Okay.
But this lack of interest is happening because of socialization and the way these stereotypes have built women to look like they shouldn't be interested in something like this. Whereas we know that 40 to 50% of player base is women.
Right.
So it's not that they're not interested, but they're probably not interested in working on a game because they're not given enough opportunity to work on the game.
Gotcha.
So lack of interest is not valid here, because they're probably facing this due to something else. And once they're in the industry as well, you don't know how much they can probably proceed further, because again, we're working with people who have stereotypes that women can't play. Women can't play well enough. They don't play enough games. They're not playing the AAA titles, or you're just making mobile games. That's not a real game. So you have all kinds of people. I mean,
layered.
I've had this I've had this fight with so many people. I've had friends tell me that if you're a mobile gamer, then are you a gamer? You're just playing games. You're not a gamer. Why? It's a platform. You're a gamer. That's all. But there are so many stereotypes. There are so many things in people's head that needs to be sorted out for it to actually influence and let lots of people in, not just women, even men. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people go back because they think it's not a strong enough career to take up. which is not okay. So I think it should be more welcoming that way.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something that's a very, very fair point. And I'm glad this is a question that we're asking most of our guests, because we end up getting such a, even within the 8 episodes that we've done, I think we've got quite a few opinions that are a diverse range. And talking about what you just said, it's definitely an extremely fair point. And the more that we were doing the research about, the industry in general, like when we were creating our pitch deck for Lobby Zero and figuring out, okay, cool, what are the voids in the market? What do we come in to fill, right? What are the problems that we can, well, so for us, when we were trying to look at problems, we our initial kind of thought that hit us was the because of the nascency of the market, the opportunities overshadowed the problems. Like that's kind of how the first thought that it hit us, because there's so many things that you can go in and start doing from a business point of view that, like when you look at a more developed market in the context of gaming, if you look at the States or you look at the West, you see that because these entities have existed for a while, and the consumer has been so the consumer and the general public, like gamers and non-gamers, have been kind of what's the word, conditioned to coexist with this concept of gaming for a while. Then more specific problems start popping up, and then businesses can come in to solve those problems. But I think with India, when we looked at, okay, cool, if we're not talking about extremely specific problems, then what are the general voids in the market that we can look at and try to address first, right? Like from a just from a thought process point of view. And then we saw, I mean, obviously a big thing is the how the industry is perceived by the market. And when I say the market, a big part of that is not, it's not just gamers, we're talking about like the parents of the gamers, or the parents or the family or the culture and the society around the people who might potentially want to make it. And a subset of that population could easily be women who would potentially make it into gaming if provided the right opportunity and the right reinforcement. And so I think a way forward for that is probably for organizations and studios that are coming up in the country to work towards uh, legitimizing how real and how legitimate the industry is and the work that we do. I mean, if you look at the entertainment industry industry in general, you look at Bollywood, or you look at music, you look at film, these are as mediums of entertainment considered quite seriously. And the people there, I mean, they are, I mean, obviously there are pockets of society that do look at it in a negative light, but in general these mediums are considered quite taken quite seriously in as mediums of entertainment. And I think organizations that come up in the country, as long as they do place, I think new ones that come up in this country do have this responsibility to the in the way that they conduct business and the way that they go about creating projects and bringing it out to the Indian market. It's a part of the storytelling and the legitimization of the industry. And I think as that happens, and as the gamer and the non-gamer in the country realizes, okay, well, like this is real. I mean, there are, like if my son goes in and works in this company or goes and works in the studio, it's actually a really cool thing. And I think that mindset will eventually happen, because gaming is blowing up. Obviously the market is blowing up, and I think legitimization is attached to that. It will come with it in the course of time, but then for issues like the ones you mentioned, the people who are in it have to always keep that at the back of their head, so that they direct the ship the right way and make sure that it grows the right way.
I think there is a lack of awareness when it comes to the potential, because companies like Rockstar and Ubisoft have established their organizations in India for like years now. But how often do you hear a game completely produced by Ubisoft India or like Rockstar India?
Right.
I mean, these
Never.
big, yeah, never. I mean, recently, like Ubisoft India gets a shot at like making a Prince of Persia remake, and that gets very negatively embraced, even though it's like the first time Indian gaming studio is trying to do something independently.
Yeah.
So it's a hard sort of ground out there, and there's this interesting video made by uh, people make games where they cover these unique outsourcing or like associate studios who basically never come into the credits, however have to crunch like 20 hours a day sometimes, and are working like non-stop on games like Cyberpunk and all, and these guys
Mm,
never even get acknowledged when it comes
mm,
to the games themselves,
right,
and
right.
only like the higher ups earn enough while people are just working as if it's a sweatshop.
Mm.
And it's a huge issue, but I feel like the demographic in India, the ones who play the game and the ones who are interested in the game, are slowly becoming aware of all of these issues, and we are
I
moving
think
towards a better space.
hopefully if we make more IP domestically,
Sure.
like pulling in from what we have here and creating experience based on that, I think that tells a really good story. Like probably what Raji had done, projects like that where we're pulling in from where we are authentically and creating something out of that based off of who we are and who, like the experiences that are native to this place, and using that to be an authentic vehicle of storytelling and showing the potential of the market. I think it's a great way to tell, you know people out there that, hey, listen, we've got talent here and we can do some really cool stuff. So hopefully more projects like that come out and tell the story and the
That's why
potential.
the Indian government is working on
Yeah,
4G.
yeah. On
4G,
4G.
I guess. Yeah.
What is
Fake
that?
PUBG. Fake
Oh,
Yeah.
PUBG.
oh, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
I
So
mean, we
yeah.
we did hope that that would have been a good
Oh,
game.
come on. There was no hope in that one.
So yeah, I think that pretty much brings it to a close. I feel like we talked about a good range of things. Definitely a lot of value here, a lot of clips that can be made out of this. um, but thank you so much, Lama, for making the time and jumping on the Ground Zero podcast. I was really curious to see how this conversation would go, because it was the first time I'm having like a serious, full blown conversation with a game designer. And I think the beautiful thing about the conversation that we had was that you were able to show, and the way you talked pulled from outside just being a game designer. Like you pulled and you showed how the process of creating a game comes from so many different places, like from real life, so from so many different real places, from real life experiences, and all that kind of ties into stitch what you do in the industry. So I think that's definitely an inspiring story for anybody who's out there who's trying to get into this space. If you're asking questions, we hope we were able to answer a fraction of it through Lamha's experiences. And we look forward to answering more questions through the conversations that are coming uh, beyond this. So again, thank you so much, Lamha, for taking the time, for joining us, for jumping on. We appreciate it. And I guess you guys, if you like this and if you're looking forward to more conversations on the Ground Zero podcast, we're planning on talking to content creators. We're planning on talking to industry experts, developers, designers. And we want to have more conversations like these. So if you guys are looking forward to that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell. And you can comment below if you're really interested in us talking to someone specifically, and we'll probably try to reach out to them. So that's pretty much it. Until next time, this is Lobby Zero signing off. Peace out.